Welcome to Gold Soul, where empowered parenthood and conscious living meet. I'm Jessie, a licensed home birth midwife, here to explore birth, parenting, and personal growth. Through real stories, reflections, and chats with holistic experts, we'll uncover fresh insights, heartfelt support, and a bit of humor. Let's laugh, learn, and grow together through the beauty and challenges life brings. Hello, thank you, and welcome back to the Gold Soul podcast. Today, we are going to have a chat with my friend and past client, Chandra. She has such a special birth story that she's going to share with us. And one of my favorite things about her is she is one of the most old souls I think I've ever encountered. And every time I sit with her and talk with her, even when it was in her prenatal care, her coming to me as her midwife, I felt like I walked away from the conversation so full and so enlightened. And the whole world needs to know about her. So we are here today to talk about her birth story. Thank you so much, my dear, for taking the time to chat with me. And if you don't mind, share a little bit about you and your family, and I think kind of what brought you to home birth and midwifery care.
Yeah. Hi, Jessie, and anyone listening. Thank you so much for letting me be on. I feel really honored to have this time with you and get to share our story. So I'm Chandra, and I'm a first-time mom, and I would consider myself a natural-minded person who's really interested in holistic living and just doing things in a more natural minded way. And that was really inspired by my workplace, actually, and my team. So I've been at this company, it's Anne Marie Skincare. I've been working with them for almost 10 years now. And so I grew up, a lot with them. And just kind of being at this workplace day in, day out, I was really exposed to this world of natural health and natural living. And I just like learned so much, aside from working for a company that is so transparent and like just really conscious and puts out amazing products. The leadership there really cultivated a workplace and culture in the team where everyone can really find, I don't know, like really good solutions and like truth in natural living. And I was just so inspired by everyone I was working with and found myself just diving deeper and deeper into this world. And so 10 years is a long time, but like little changes here and there. And now I just find that I don't know, any aspect of life that I think of, I'm like, okay, like what's my first place, like let's go do things a more natural way. And that isn't to say I'm perfect. I think I would say I'm like 80-20, maybe 70-30. Like I try to be as healthy as possible, but I'm human. I like to indulge. I like to do all things. So I like that it opened up my eyes to options and being more conscious with the choices that I make. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. So, you have free will to do what you want, but at least you know what's available to you. And you don't feel like you're being blindsided or cornered into decision in your everyday life. So that's kind of how I got into this world of more natural minded living. And then my family, I actually am married to my middle school sweetheart. So we're like, I just feel so grateful that, his and my path kind of like brought us together, and we're married and we get to have this amazing opportunity to raise a baby together. And yeah, I would say like early on, okay, again, like coming from this like mindset of wanting to be more natural minded, like, and a lot of my coworkers have had home births, or they chose to work with a midwife versus an OB. So like for us, or like for myself, it was a given. I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, I definitely want to do a home birth. And I remember in the beginning, I was like telling my partner, I'm going to do a home birth. Like, this is the path that we're taking. And he was like, you know what? I support you. I myself am not like 100% there yet, but I really loved that he kind of just trusted me. And he was like, you take the lead on this. Like, I'll follow and I'll support you however you need. And I think the more and more like we went into like throughout we went into the journey of pregnancy, like he started to open his eyes, and he's like a staunch believer in all of this too. So it's like really cool seeing both of our evolutions together and like coming together throughout this pregnancy and birth. And yeah, I just wanted to also mention, I'm sorry, I kind of rambled, but just to kind of tie up the introduction, I'm also a follower of Christ. And I feel like that was a huge piece in our journey too. Um, I like one thing that I definitely want to mention is I remember, we got married. So my partner and I got married in 2023, and we're talking about wanting to start a family. And I like just so happened to rekindle my relationship with God. I was kind of detached for a while, but then found my calling through friends who inspired me to kind of reopen that relationship. And I just feel like it was meant to happen that way. And as I was kind of going deeper into my own faith, it became such an integral part in the start of our family planning too. And my friend who's the COO of the skincare company that I work for, she's a really close friend of mine. She was telling me a lot about conscious conception, like like really set that intention, like put that out to you know put that out to God, and like really pray for um, connecting you with your baby, and like having this love that you have with your partner, like bring this soul to life. And I think that was like such a powerful thing to hear and remember, because it from the get-go, it's like you're already having so much intention, and um like allowing the spirituality of this beautiful human event to like meld together and create this wonderful magic. And like I remember when I got my like positive pregnancy test result, I was like, oh my gosh, that was God. Like I just felt so like I was obviously so excited for like me and my partner, but I was like, wow, this is like deeper than that. Like this is, I don't know, it felt magical. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of like tie that all in, because I really think like I hope our conversation goes there, but I think like the spirituality aspect of pregnancy, growing a baby, having a deep love with your partner, and motherhood, parenthood, like it's so a part of all of that.
Absolutely. And I know we touched on that a few times prenatally, and I talk about this all the time, that there is no denying when you look at there's really not a better word other than magic of the fact that we can conceive, and how small that window of opportunity is, all of the alignment that needs to occur for conception to happen, for a viable pregnancy to take place, the act of birthing, a baby to inflate their lungs. I mean, just all of it, the way that all goes about. I mean, it is so divine. And in my personal opinion, like there is just no other experience that you can go through that is closer to God. Like it is such a spiritual experience. And if you allow yourself to open up your mind to experience it, it's unbelievable. There are not words to articulate it. And for those that are coming into midwifery care and they want their birth to be that spiritual experience, and regardless of what your religion is, what your relationship with God is, that is a very personal and intimate thing that only we can, decide and claim. But regardless of what it is, like birth is so spiritual. So I love that, we're going to definitely bring that into this conversation. And one of the most unique things about you that I love is we first connected before you were even pregnant. And you are someone, it fascinates me how you have a perfect blend of being pretty type A, pretty structured, but very ethereal as well. And it is so cool for me to watch that because, yeah, you were a planner from the very beginning, the very first time we talked. So will you talk a little bit about that, on how you knew that this is what I was going to do and I'm going to start looking for my midwife well before you even conceived?
Yes, yeah. So, like I mentioned, having that influence from my team and my workplace, I knew immediately like I want to go the home birth route. And I was just like looking up midwives in my area. And, I live, more inland. So we're kind of like in between LA and OC. So I was like, dang, like ideally, I would love to have someone that's like closer by just from the point of convenience. But I was like, um, I was like, feeling like, okay, my search may not, I didn't want to go in with too high of a hope because I was like, I may have to just find someone who's in the larger cities. And lo and behold, I find your page and I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, because your surrounding area was a lot of the towns that, are near us. And it was kind of the smaller cities that are in between these larger places. And so I was like, okay, this is fascinating. And I go onto your page and I see that like you are more holistic minded. And because, even within midwives, like, and the home birth space, that can also range too, right? So just like finding someone that you feel more aligned with, like I was like, okay, this feels just intuitively like you see like these signs that tell you, okay, this sounds like I'm kind of on the right path. This sounds like I'm on the right path. And then we had our call, and I really liked how when we got to meet, sorry, actually this is before I reached out to you, but well, I'll just finish this part. So once we like actually got on a call, I loved how you were both like very informative and like deep in information, but then super personable. And like, I just felt there was like this vibe that felt comfortable and cool. And I liked that blend a lot. But yeah, I think, just going back, like seeing that, I hate saying that's like location specific, but I feel like that was a sign, like, especially because I was skeptical at first that I might not even find anyone. And so getting to chat with you, seeing that we have like alignment in also, like lifestyles, that was like a huge plus for me. And so reaching out to you. And then also one thing that I loved was when I emailed you, you were so like, so kind over email. Cause I feel like it's still, it's still a service, right? So someone can be very professional in the way that they respond, but you were just like so excited. And I was like, ooh, I want to like talk with her and I want to like connect with her. And so I really loved that.
Oh, I love that too. I am a very excitable person by nature. So that's funny that came over via email. And just for those that are listening, the geographical element of it is actually really important because we're in Southern California. We live, so Chandra and I live less than 10 minutes away from each other. We're in between Orange County and LA, but technically I reside in LA County. But when I tell people that, they think downtown LA because that's what most people know who aren't here. And it's like this weird space of like, I'm not like Newport Beach, Orange County. I'm not downtown LA. You're in this like weird zone that not a lot of people are familiar with our area unless they live here. And so when you're pregnant or when you're, a perinatal provider, it's people trip out. They're like, oh my gosh, there's a midwife right here. Because I'm pretty sure I'm like the only one within a 15-mile like residential area. And it's funny because I drive a minivan and I have a sticker on the back of my van that says professional baby catcher. And so everyone's always like, I saw you driving or I saw your husband driving your car because surely it's only me, So it does absolutely matter because it's kind of a big deal that there is, this space. And that was when I moved back to the area and I opened up my office space. That was my vision, is I wanted to be able to cater to this area because there's really not a lot of perinatal providers around. So going back to your pregnancy, another very unique thing about Chandra is that she wanted as low, what's the word I want to use? Intervention as possible. And even in regards to monitoring in pregnancy. And this was a very, very strong request of her. And to me, it came across like, this is what I want. Are you able to provide this? Because if not, then I am going to look elsewhere. And I had so much reverence for you and, pride that here is this first time mom. And I could tell, we hadn't even talked about religion, but I could tell that this woman, she's the real deal. She is so so rooted in her faith and, God and in her body that she has so much trust that she is not coming from any type of, fear stance at all, that she did not, want Doppler usage. She wanted minimal ultrasounds. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. What landed you on knowing that's what you wanted and feeling so strong in that conviction of that's what your prenatal care was going to look like?
Yeah. Again, I have to give so many props to my friend and coworker, Rachel. She's really the one that inspired me a lot, like throughout my pregnancy, but even prior to that, because she had her baby 2 years before me. And she's the COO of the skincare company I work for, very deep in her knowledge, her own belief system. And she was just showing me a lot of actually free birthing content and wild pregnancies, and just really opening up my eyes, like, hey, I know, we're interested in like natural home birth, but you can go even deeper than that. Like there's this whole world that, of strong moms who just trust themselves and their bodies and their beautiful, perfect design to bring their baby as safely and as uninterrupted into the world. And even starts again, like, with conscious conception all throughout pregnancy. And we're just talking a lot about that. So I was consuming a lot of information kind of in that space. And, there were parts of me where I was like, okay, I don't yet feel comfortable doing a free birth, but some of this stuff, like, I do understand and I resonate and I can see that. And, it would be awesome to one day have that level of trust and fearlessness. But overall, just like kind of hearing more stories and seeing that today in this like modern context, I feel like was really helpful for me to start to go inward and say, and like see what holds true for me. What do I feel comfortable with? What am I uncomfortable with? And am I willing to challenge that? And I started to look at like ultrasound usage and also like the over usage of it, and looking at alternatives again. So like, at a prenatal appointment, you can use a Doppler, but after a certain time, you can also use a fetoscope. And so I was like, okay, let's go kind of like let's see if there's a more natural option and can we use that? Is that available? So I knew that going into it, again, like being inspired by these like wild pregnancy stories where, they don't even work with a provider. They're kind of they're just really tuning in with their baby. I wanted to work with a provider, but I was like, okay, let's minimize ultrasound usage as much as possible. And I liked that it was like a very specific goal because then I can kind of use that as my North Star. And I remember I was like, I don't want to use ultrasound at all. And you were like, we have to do a 20-week anatomy scan just to see, how things are going. And I was like, I remember feeling like, do we need to? And in hindsight, actually, I am glad that I did it. Which I kind of want to go back to the point that you made about being type A and like being ethereal. Like, I'm also like a risk averse person. So this pregnancy actually taught me a lot of like truly surrendering and like not suppressing my fear, but like letting it, like really talking to it and like seeing where it comes from and then accepting it and letting it pass through me. But yeah, like, so in hindsight, I am glad that I did the 20-week anatomy scan because I also got to see my baby for the first time that way. And it was, again, kind of like this like happy medium of having some sort of informational marker that everything is good and healthy. And it does build a little bit of reassurance, right? But after that, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going back to what I wanted to do. Yeah, I kind of went on a little rant there, but
No, I love it. So there's so many parts of that I love is first off, and I know we discussed, we'll touch a little bit on, some of the things you guys experienced postpartum, but that balance of, yes, this is my North Star. This is my hopes and desires. And then, God coming in and be like, okay, well, let me kind of shake things up for you and see how committed are you to this? And are you willing to trust me and let go of what you had desired and thought you wanted, right? So all this to say that I feel like that definitely played a role in some of the things you navigated during the birth and after, he was born. But talking on the ultrasound, so just for those listening, you do not have to have any ultrasounds in pregnancy. This is a requirement that I have in my practice, and I let people know this from the jump start, that you can absolutely probably find a provider that is fine not doing the anatomy scan. But for me, having that anatomical scan to say that yes, anatomically, a home birth is safe for us, that there isn't any issues that would require a life-saving surgery for that baby immediately following birth, that the placenta is not covering the cervix, which would not allow an exit for the baby. These are things that, as a provider, make me feel more comfortable. And just as families, we want you to come into care informed and empowered. We also, as providers, are allowed to have boundaries, for the care we provide. So that is something that I require. It is not something you absolutely have to do with every provider. That's the only scan that I ask for. And so we had these conversations like, yeah, I'm totally, even when it came down to blood work stuff, we talked about, okay, this is what I normally run. How do you feel about it? And it was such a great experience for me that we constantly were working in partnership. And it was so beautiful how we would navigate these conversations. And again, reverence is the word I go back to. I held such a reverence for being a first-time mom, how empowered you were and open-minded you were to having these conversations, and how prepared you were. Every single prenatal visit, Chandra would come in, she would open up her little notebook, and she was taking down notes, and she would come in with questions, and they were so thoughtful. And it was just a really great experience for me to be in this seat and navigating that relationship with you. So we went the very first half of her pregnancy, never using a Doppler. And that was really magical for me, because usually what happens is everyone comes in, if they come in before 8 weeks, they're like, can we listen to the baby? And I'm always like, no, it's too early. And, we normally don't listen till around 10 to 12 weeks, but the first time we can, people are like, let's do it. And so it was very cool for me to be like, no, we're not going to, and we're feeling her fundus, and, we're doing all the other things. And then as we get further along, and then we can start to hear using the fetoscope. Remember, it took a while for you to be able to hear it. And that was just a really special experience, because in my past experiences, families often want a blend of both. They don't want the Doppler at every prenatal appointment, but prior to being able to use the fetoscope, they usually do like it. So it was really special. And I feel like it deepened our connection. It deepened my connection with your baby. It was just very, very special. And I think it also, there's a lot of your story that, is completely God's work. We're talking about how, there's this planner side of you, and we're wanting to address fears and move through them. There was also this enticement, or not enticement, but this, not romanticizing, but we liked the idea of, what a wild pregnancy and free birth kind of represented, and how your birth ended up occurring. That, I will say, we're going to get into it, but Chandra's, not once did this baby have Doppler usage, not even in labor. So it was pretty amazing, because we had talked, I am going to require Doppler usage to monitor baby in labor. We talked about that, and the 20-week anatomy scan. And lo and behold, this little nugget didn't have a single Doppler use at all, not even in labor. So going back to the pregnancy, were there any challenges that you faced, whether it be with your partner, family, friends, on your decision, not just to home birth, but did you share with them how you really wanted low intervention, and you really wanted it to be a more internal and godly experience? Did you receive pushback on that?
I actually didn't go as deep to explain like the nitty gritty of my choices. I kind of told, like, I think like our parents and some of our cousins and such, that we were going to have a home birth, and the immediate kind of response was, "Are you sure that's safe? Like, you know, you feel okay doing that? And they're like, don't you like want to consider seeing an OB like on the side just in case? And I'm like, no, 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 no. And um, early on, again, like I really came into our pregnancy with like a very strong perspective that I wanted to be as positive minded as possible. I didn't want anyone to disturb that peace. And so I even told my partner, I was like, we don't have to explain our choices to people. We can if we want to, but we can easily just, stop the conversation or let them know, hey, we're not going to talk about it any further. I was like, I don't want, if people are going to constantly question us and, you know, fearmonger or have their fears projected onto us. Like I was like, I don't want that in our space at all. I don't want that in baby's space. And that's another thing that I want to touch on. Like early on, I was like, everything that I'm affected by, our baby's affected by, and I don't want. I'm. This is like our first experience of protecting our baby. So like let's make sure that our baby just feels confident knowing what they're gonna do, what we're gonna do, and we feel good as our own little unit with our plan. So when our parents would kind of ask us questions, we would be like, we're not talking about this anymore, or we're gonna do this. This is the decision that we've made. If you don't feel in support of it just yet, that's okay. Like, you have your own opinions too, and we are cool with that, but we just don't really want to talk about it anymore. So I think us having that stance early on, our parents were very like respectful with us not wanting to talk about it further if we didn't want to. And then our cousins, and friends, they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, they kind of know that we're a little bit more crunchy anyway. So they're like, oh, we wouldn't expect anything different. We don't really understand it, but like you do you. So that was kind of the perspective amongst our friends and family.
Cool. So, what were some ways that you really connected with your baby during pregnancy? Because a lot of traditional ways that people find that connection is, through the ultrasounds and through listening, to their heartbeat. And for you, not going that traditional monitoring route, what did you lean into for, establishing that bond and connecting with him?
Yeah. So early on, like you mentioned, people get really excited to see their baby before they can use a fetoscope. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous because, there's also like in you making the choice to opt out of certain things and not knowing if something does go awry, you have to fully take responsibility for that choice. And that's a part of the choices that we make, right? Regardless of what choice you make, the consequence, whether positive or negative, is the one that you chose and you have to ride it out. And so I really had to like let go and let God. And I prayed. I think it was like perfect timing and rekindling my relationship with God prior to this pregnancy because I spoke with God so often, just constantly praying to the Lord, like, please protect our baby, please watch over our baby, please bless our baby. And so having that connection with God just allowed me to cast my worries onto Him. But then also speaking with my baby, I remember like when I would have a bad day, I would be like, I'm sorry, like, I want to feel good. I want you to feel good. Like, and I would say like, I'm not always going to have happy days, but I promise you, like, I want to do whatever I can to make sure that we talk about it and feel resolved. And like, let's go into the next day, this beautiful opportunity and new day that we get to have from the Lord. Like, let's have a good one, and I would just constantly talk to my baby. And at first it felt a little silly, but I think the more that you just do something, it starts to feel like habitual and it's easier to do. And to be honest, I think because I practiced so much in pregnancy talking to my baby, um, I was really trying to tune into him during labor. And I feel like it helped me a lot, like carry me through those contractions because I was like, I trust you. Like I'm following your lead. Like I'm here doing this dance with you. We're in this together. And that was like also my rock. Like when I felt like things were hard, I was like, no, no, I'm in this with baby. Like we're doing this together. So definitely just talking with him a lot. And yeah, I remember like there were days where I would like, go to the gym and I'm like, we're driving on the street right now. And like, just saying silly things. And I'm like, we're making a left turn. And getting used to saying, surface level things, getting used to saying like deeper things and just constantly having this conversation with him.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And it's so important to do, and really getting over that hump of it feeling weird. I remember in my second pregnancy, that was my first home birth. And my midwife during that pregnancy ended up being a dear friend and mentor of mine. And she was known for always telling you, okay, when you have a bad day, I want you to put a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly and take a breath. And if someone cuts you off or whatever it is, you say, baby, that is mine to carry, not yours. I love you. This is mine to carry. And at first, yeah, it feels weird because you're not used to like operating that way in most times, right? But there is also science to back that the hormones that we release obviously enter the amniotic fluid and bathe the baby in those hormones. So even just taking that moment of breath, of trying to calm and regulate ourselves, that will impact what hormones are released, and in turn how that impacts the baby's heart rate and how they're responding. There's also a documentary that I love that you can find on YouTube called What Babies Want, and it talks about the condition, mentally, physically, and emotionally, as well as spiritually, that mom is in pregnancy absolutely correlates and impacts the baby. And so, yeah, get used to doing the uncomfortable, get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that is the first things to do when you're trying to find connection and bonding with baby. Because guess what? When they're here and they're just this blob of, cuteness, they're not literally using the words to communicate, but guess what you're going to do all day, every day for the first few months? Okay, baby, I'm going to go wash my hands. Okay, let's change your diaper. It's time to eat now. You're doing that. So get in the habit of doing it now, because it does help, that connection and bond. Okay, so your labor went a lot different than, what we had anticipated and what statistically happens for a first time mom. It unfolded incredibly fast. Can you walk us through that day a little bit?
Yeah, it's so wild because I was like looking at my photos today, and I was like looking around that time, and the night before I went into labor, I like took all these screenshots of birth affirmations and like birth inspired photos just to like create an album, because I was anticipating like I was like, I'm gonna go past my due date. I'm gonna have a long labor, so let me have things that'll kind of these tools that can carry me through when either there's a lull period or if I need some inspiration, and just to kind of like get locked in again. um, and yeah, lo and behold, the next morning I started contractions at 2 a.m. And I think again, spiritually, like there's that divine timing of, body feels ready, baby's ready. Subconsciously, I chose to take all those, like save a file of those, save a folder of all those files, and have it like I did not use those images at all during labor, but something in my mind or body was like, this is just a little exercise to say we're about to enter the zone. And so yeah, I had my contractions start at 2 a.m. And honestly, like it already, I think they were like somewhere between like 5 to 8 minutes apart. So like it ranged, but I was like, it feels kind of like they're already pretty close together, starting this early on, because I was watching like birth vlogs and hearing other people's stories where they're like, I'll have some contractions and then it'll fizzle out. And then I have like lots of time just to rest. And I remember hearing people say like, when you get that rest period, don't feel like you need to rush back into it. Maybe your body just needs that rest. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, all this is happening. I also forgot to mention, I went into labor 39 weeks and 2 days. So I was already also like before my due date, which was another kind of like, oh, interesting. I was waiting. I thought I was going to go into birth like 41 weeks or something. So my contractions start at 2. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I had like a labor comb. I was like, oh my gosh, the labor comb's not even working. I was like, is it supposed to feel like this, like this already, like this soon? And so time passes. I also stepped into like our spare bedroom because I didn't want to bother my partner. And I was like, okay, my game plan is like, I'll just see how this continues going, and then I'll message my doula and my midwife. And so, but I'll wait until like, the sun rises. And so around 6 a.m., I'm like feeling a little nauseous. So I go into the bathroom, And my partner finds me and he's like, "Hey, are you okay? I didn't see you in bed." I was like, "I think I'm in labor." And he's like, "Oh shoot, okay." And he was still working, like he had not gone on leave yet. And so he's like, "I'm really sorry, but I have to finish up a few things for work." And I was like, "Okay, do your thing, do your thing." And then I texted you and I texted my doula Patricia. I was like, "Hey, I think I have contractions right now." And like I hear from both of you guys, okay, like you guys didn't say this, but it was like very clear, like, okay, we're gonna be in this for a little bit. So you guys were just, really encouraging and supportive, like just keep me in the loop, like let me know how things are going, let me know how you're feeling. If things start to pick up, get in touch. And then I was like, okay. And then I remember calling around like 7 or 8. I was like texting, you're like, okay, like let's hop on the phone. And I was able to talk to you and I was like laboring. And you're like, okay, I think we're good. Like we're not in the depths just yet. And then also my partner's like, okay, like wrapped everything up, like get here now. Like I need you to be offline and be here with me. He's like, okay. So he's giving me snacks. And we had like this whole game plan of like, I was like, make me my labor aid, with like salt, honey, water, lemon. And then he was like, I made you some protein. I know you wanted a lot of protein. Like he's like, he made me eggs. I was like trying to eat it. And I was like, I cannot eat that. And so I'm just like constantly laboring. I did a little bit of hydrotherapy. The shower was amazing. Ugh, just like being on all fours in the shower floor, having the water hit my back. It was like amazing. Um, but yeah, through it all, I really think my best tool was breathing. I used this one YouTube video by Bridget Tyler. Um, she has like a track where she just counts up to 4 and then the exhale, and I just had that on repeat. But the video itself wasn't on loop, so I had to constantly hit play. But it like really helped carry me through. Um, and also Patricia was a godsend. She did counter pressure. Like I'd be like, squeeze, please help me squeeze. Oh, I forgot to mention so I texted her and I was like, hey, like around this was like around 6 and then 7, 8. And then I was like, I want to hold out as much as possible. I wanted to have like as little um like what's it called? Influence or like presence during my birthing process. I wanted to feel like like an animal who is in like a plain of tall grass and they're just like in their own like space and totally unaware of anything else and they're just in the zone. Like that's how I want to feel. So I was like, I know I have a doula, I know I have a midwife. I don't want them to really be here until when I like absolutely need them. But I remember messaging Patricia and I was like, okay, I think it'd be great if you can come around this time. I think like I texted her at like I hit 10 a.m. and I was like, oh, can you come around? Can you get on your way here soon? And she's like, yep, I got you. And she lives a little bit further away. So she ended up arriving like 45 minutes later. And immediately she comes in, she's like doing the hip squeeze, and then my water breaks. And I was like, it's like interesting because again, like with the timing, like my body kind of knew. I was like, okay, I don't want that many people here. But then once I was ready to have someone there, my body's like, all right, game time. We're going now. One thing that I also want to mention was I was GBS positive and I was really nervous about my water breaking prior to having contractions. That was another thing that I prayed for. I was like, God, please let me have a textbook boring birth. Please let me have a textbook boring birth. Like, and I was looking at a lot of images of on-call births of women birthing babies in the amniotic sac so that I can just visualize my water not breaking. And if my baby was, come in the amniotic sac, amazing. And I was so glad that I had already had contractions. And then when my water broke at that point, I was like, it's okay because I'm already, things are going, so we're good. And actually, it helped relieve a lot of pressure too. And so I'm laboring, and then Patricia's like, "Hey, do you actually want to like head over into your birth space?" Because I was in my bedroom at that time, and so Andy had set up the pool earlier, and we go over to the birth space, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, like let's do that." And I'm laboring, and I was like, I need to like hunch over the couch, and she's like, all right, that's fine. Like, let me get you like a yoga mat. So she just made I had like my knees on the floor with my head over the couch, and she made my space really comfortable. And all like while this is happening, Andy's like timing my contractions. Andy's my partner, timing my contractions, and he's also. It's funny because like on the contraction timer app, there's like you can put a happy face, like like a neutral face or a sad face, and because he had heard me vocalize through my contractions pretty early on, he was like, they all kind of sound the same, and it's gonna be a long labor, so I think we're in the neutral phase. Like we're not yet in the sad face part. And so he kept marking them as neutral, and he's like, oh yeah, I think intuitively I knew things were progressing, but because you had vocalized earlier on, I thought it was just all we were still in the middle of it, and I didn't want to like I think everyone was like, let's not get ahead of ourselves and like assume that we're close and then feel disappointed. And so he's like texting and you're like, get on FaceTime right now. Actually, no, I think prior to that, because I think they were texting you and you're like anticipating a call. So like, you're like, oh, they're texting.
So what had happened is we had touch base in the morning. And I had clinic that day. And so I was trying to gauge, okay, should I cancel clinic and head over? What should I do? First time mom. And like you said, you were pretty cognizant in our conversation. And I heard you have 2 contractions, but you breathed right through them and you came right back into the conversation. And as mentioned before, we live very close to each other. My office is very close to her home. So I felt confident with, okay, I'll go into the office. I let everyone know that was on the docket for that day. Like, hey, I've got someone in labor. I may cancel on you as you're walking in the door. Like that's how this life goes, right? Because, one day it'll be your turn. But, so Patricia had texted that she was, or I think I was in the group text. I knew that Patricia was on her way. And so I had told her, please let me know your assessment when you get there. How's she doing? And I'm looking at the contractions because Andy is, keeping track of them. And it seems like, okay, cool. We're entering active labor. We're in the early phase of it. Like, okay, cool. I am going to get called in probably in the next couple hours. So Patricia gets there and she lets me know like, oh yeah, she's good, but I think we're still a little bit early. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, go about it. And then I remember telling Andy, I need you to call me if her water breaks. Call me because I'm in appointment. So I'm not going to be able to probably see if my phone is, I get a text or whatever. And I remember being in an appointment and then there was like 3 text messages, her water broke. And I'm like, so I'm like all panicked because I know with how your contractions look like, oh my gosh, okay, are we going to be pushing a baby soon? Or, are we just now really in the throes of active labor? But I need to hop on the phone and know what's going on. And as midwives, we like to assess, like, what's the color of the fluid? Is the baby still moving? What's the amount of the fluid? Is there a smell? There are things we like to talk through. So I step out of the room and I'm trying to call Andy and he's not answering. And so now I'm like, okay, what is happening? Like, what's going on? And I think on like the 3rd try, I got him on the phone and he was, poor Andy. I feel like he had so much pressure on him and he was doing such a great job on like, he sounded very calm, but he also sounded kind of like, I don't know how to answer these questions. Cause there was a lot going on. Right. And so we kind of talked and, I got my answers and everything sounded like it was going normal and fine. And so we left it like, okay, I want you to text me an update in the next 30 minutes to an hour. I said, I want you to call me in the next 30 minutes to an hour so I know if I need to get on the road. And I remember we get off the phone and I remember stressing, like, call me. And I think it wasn't even like 7 minutes later where he texts me. I believe he was like, she feels like she has to poop or something along the lines of like, oh my goodness, she's getting ready to push. And it was such a whirlwind. I'm like, okay, because I also think, I homeschooled 2 of my kids. I had them in office with me for homeschool. So I was like, I got to drop my kids off. Like I got to get on the road. It was like this whole like, all right, here we go. It's time. And that part is like really the most no, it brings a lot of excitement in that phase of midwifery where you're like, okay, here we go. And it's not what we normally expect with a first time mom, because your contractions at that point, as we normally expect them to do when your water's released, just really ramped up. So we get the idea that you're starting to get ready to meet your baby. I get on the road. And then do you have a good recollection of this? I'm curious, like what your memory is from this point on.
I remember like at that time, you're like, get on FaceTime. Okay, prior to that, we were like, oh, can we fill up the birth pool? Like, can we like, because Patricia's like, do you want to head into the pool? Like, it might help with like relieving some of the sensations, and it can give you like a moment to just like relax. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I was like, and and then I remember like Andy is like talking to you, and you're like, do not fill up the pool, do not fill up the pool. And they were like, we can't fill up the pool. And I was like, and I honestly didn't care though. I was just like, I kind of knew I was never going to use the pool because I was like, it's interesting because like I think deep down I knew like what was happening, but then I didn't want to tell myself that that was happening because then if it didn't happen, then I would be like, oh man, like we're still very early on. But yeah, so you guys were, I think, FaceTiming or like, yeah, got on a call, and then you were like, okay, like position the phone here so like I can kind of see and assess like what's going on. But like there was blood, and he was like, we don't know where to put the phone. So he's like, I gotta be like here. And so he like hangs up, and you're like calling again. I remember that. And then I think you were telling him, tell her to candle breathe, tell her to candle breathe. Cause I think at that point I was pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So I was like trying to keep my breaths as not like controlled, but like, yeah. And just trying, I was like visualizing like baby just slipping out, and like, how do I allow that to happen through my breath? And then, yeah. And then I don't know if at that point my baby's head was already out, or if it was like if you were on the phone prior to that. But yeah, he like I just kept breathing him out, and then Andy caught him, and then he passed my baby through my legs and hiked him over to me, and then I held him, and then I was just like, so. Oh, another thing too is we chose to opt out of knowing our baby's gender. And so I was like really excited. I was like, Andy's just happy he caught the baby. Everything is good and fine. And we delivered a baby. But I was like, it's a boy. And I was like so stoked and held him. And then my placenta came out like 2 minutes after.
I don't even know if it was 2 minutes because I think you birthed 7 minutes before I walked in the door. And yeah, your placenta came out very, very fast.
Yeah. I was like expecting there to be like, yeah, like my placenta to still be, inside and my baby connected to me in that way. But like right after he came out, my placenta came out, and I was like, that was very fast. And I was like on the birth high already. I was like holding my baby. I was like feeling good, happy. I was like, we're here. We're good. We did it. And I did pass out, which I think, okay, so I was holding.
I was there already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had walked in the door. You had just delivered the placenta. So I have to go back on your chart notes. I mean, you had delivered, I think I had just pulled into the neighborhood. So, and it was right when I had parked, ran in, you had delivered the placenta. And then right as I walked in, you looked at me and I noticed the look. I'm like, she's about to go down. And you had passed out right as I was there. Yeah. And you had that look like when you've seen it, you can identify like, 10 seconds before it's about to happen. And you were so blissful. And then you went out, and then you came back, and we moved you onto the couch, and you were still kind of like, what just happened? And it was like, Chandra, are you with me? Like you were like in this touch and go place of like here and not here, here and not here. But everything else was fine. Just for those listening, like, oh my gosh, that sounds so crazy. It was totally fine. Baby was fine. Chandra was fine. It was a very fast birth. Her placenta was delivered very fast, and there was a decent amount of blood loss. But clinically, everyone was stable and fine. But it was funny because as you are looking at Chandra right now, that is what she looked like, but even smilier. It was pretty classic.
Yeah, it's like funny because, because another thing too is like I passed out a few more times thereafter. But again, like the birth high it felt so, I was like so happy and ecstatic. And I was like, and I hate to say this, but like I think like passing out and coming back, it kind of felt good because I have a moment to just like be out and then everyone's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm good. I feel good."
You were. It was really interesting to watch, because we did lose a good amount of blood as we navigated you to the back of the house, passed out again. And we were in a place of like, okay, are we going to keep her here? Are we not? And we ended up staying home. But yeah, it was interesting. You see people when they lose consciousness like that and they come back, it's always a little bit of a different story on like either they're really shocked and confused looking around. But for you, it was literally like you were just riding a high. You were just like so happy go lucky. Baby was perfect. It was an interesting experience. And I think that being a midwife who has also experienced common minor complications during my births. As much as I also in my pregnancies romanticize the idea of a free birth, and in my fourth pregnancy, I did not have formal prenatal care. I would monitor myself during that pregnancy up until the end. But I love the idea of just full autonomy over the experience and being connected to my baby and being connected to my God. And, that just feels so, it resonates so much with me. But in those moments, having experienced that, even as a midwife with over a decade of, birthing experiences under my belt, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of births, I wasn't able as a midwife to recognize, that my son wasn't breathing. And I'm so thankful that I had a team of midwives there. And not that, I don't think it's right to always make decisions because of fears and because of traumas, right? But even in your experience, like I'm so thankful that I was there when I was there, right? Like I feel like kind of tying it back into this whole conversation, I feel like the timing of when I got there was a very God thing as well. And I try to be careful when someone's sharing their birth story of sharing too much of my thoughts about it. But I say that here, I'm going to do it anyway. We navigated this pregnancy on really wanting it to be intentional. Intentional was the underlying word, I think, of your pregnancy. And, we were very intentional about not, using traditional forms of monitoring. And then God gave us this like, okay, here you go. You're going to birth without Jessie there, right? But then the moment I got there is when we experienced things that I needed to be there for, right? It would have looked a lot different if I wasn't and Jenna wasn't with me, my assistant. And it's in those moments when I reflect as, a believer and as a midwife and as a mother where I'm like, you did your thing. You did your thing. You gave us what Chandra ultimately, I think deep down wanted, because even when we talked and even when I first got on the phone with Andy, there was a moment when I said, okay, does she need me? Does she need me? And he asked you and you had said, no, I think not yet. And so you really were holding on to, whereas normally it's the opposite. Normally people are like, I need you right now. I just had my first real contraction. You know what I mean? You, I think, really just wanted to have that free birthing experience. And so we got, you were blessed with that. You were blessed with not having the Doppler monitoring and being able to really feel and root your heels into your ultimate power, as well as surrender, right? And leaning into your faith in God and into your baby and your essence, your soul, everything that you knew you could do. But then having the team there when you needed them. So, I don't believe that anything happens just by chance. And I also believe that every person I encounter, whether it's in this professional space as their midwife or the person at the grocery store, like I feel like there is a purpose for every interaction we have. And I get chills and a little, my tear ducts are literally stinging as I say this, like your birth story. And I say this wholeheartedly. I want you to know I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It is so special to me because it reminds me that all of this is, sorry, here I getting emotional. It's so much bigger than us. You know what I mean? And it's so humbling to me. And I'm reminded that I'm also the student in all of this, So going back to all of this, were there any moments of doubt or fear when you realized that I wasn't going to make it, or even when I was there and we experienced a couple little hiccups along the way?
I think honestly, when I was laboring, I was so like in the zone. I just really I prayed a lot to God when it felt really tough. And I just kept talking to my baby. And I think because I was so in that mode of like nothing else mattered. I was just like, these are my two channels, like God and baby. And these are the only things that I'm focusing on. That I think that's really what carried me through. I do think towards the end, I did say that maybe I did not need you just yet, but I was like, where's Jessie? So it's funny because like I think that was my I think that was like my way of saying like I'm ready. But wait, what was the question again? I'm like
No,
rambling.
right. No, it's okay. If you had any moments of fear or doubt during realizing I wasn't going to make it in time, and then immediately after when I was there and we were losing a little bit of blood and passing out.
Yeah, I think again throughout labor, I did not have any fear or doubt. And I really attribute that to like the wisdom of my baby and like the protection by God. I also didn't really have fear or doubt postpartum, like right after, because I think I was riding that birth high. Like I think those feel good feelings, just I was truly just like in a state of bliss. But I remember all of us chatting and saying like, we're so thankful that you and Jenna were there because like if it was just me and Andy, like he probably would be like, what am I supposed to do? Like he would be like not I think he also has like a lot of adrenaline rushing, because he's experienced this with me. And then now having to like take care of both me and baby, and it's a whole new experience for him. Like we feel like we're in such good hands. And um I mean, we even had our doula there too. Like, it was like me, Patricia, and Annie. So like having Patricia there was like really reassuring to like throughout just laboring as well. But I'm like, one thing that I think about is like, yeah, I think that you and Jenna were like meant to be there at the time that you guys were there, because I did get to have this uninterrupted birth, but then at the same time, like felt so cared for by you guys. Like I was just like Andy and I always talk about how grateful we are that we get to not only be at home and like be in the comfort of our home, like immediately with our baby, but like we were with a care team that we felt like we were friends with. So I didn't feel like I was just with amongst strangers who are just doing their job. We were like chatting it up, having laughs, and it felt so comfortable. And that kind of goes back to the whole thing of, when you're even when you like go into labor, your body needs to feel comfortable, and like it has to feel like it can trust the place that it's in, because on a biological level, if it feels like there's threat around, then it wants to close up. So I just feel like throughout the entire thing I was like in a state of like relaxation. Yes, there was a lot of work that was being done, but there was like a lot of trust with the people that I was with and what my body was doing. And I think that, yeah, helps carry everything through.
I love it. If you could pick 3 words to describe your birth, what do you think they would be?
Hmm. I would choose spiritual, um, trust, and empowering.
Those are the best 3 words. I love it. I love it so much. Okay, so moving along in the timeline, postpartum looked a little different. And again, going back to lessons, I think, that are presented towards us when we envision the way that we want something to look like and decision makings and things like that. Sometimes God's like, okay, we're going to shake this up because although you want this, you need to learn this lesson. Do you want to share, and it could be as little of detail as you feel comfortable with, some of the challenges you face in the early postpartum days and how that felt navigating certain decision making now as a mom with a little baby in front of you?
Yeah. So our baby had jaundice, and I, um, okay, so it's interesting because, like, you can have the option, or I guess most parents will do like the newborn screening and like blood typing on the first day of birth, right when baby gets there. I really want to delay that, because I wanted to ensure that my baby had a really beautiful, comfortable, safe introduction to the world, and I didn't want to disrupt that. And so I wanted to see if we could do some of that testing later on. Um, and so we have our postpartum visits, and then we see, or actually, early on, you're like, okay, I think baby has a little bit of jaundice. But I also knew that that was like pretty common amongst babies. Um, but then of course, wanting to research as much as possible, I was like, let me see just what this is all about, look it all up. And, you know, everywhere it says, okay, you want to make sure that um, you monitor jaundice like immediately, because if levels get too high, you're at risk of brain damage. And we're like, oh my goodness. And one of the things that could contribute to that is blood type incompatibility. But I hadn't done that yet because I decided that I didn't want to do it initially. And so that was kind of like the first thing where I was like, okay, now do I have to? I was like, okay, I want to collect that and figure that out later. But I was like, okay, do I do that now? And as the days were passing, I felt like his jaundice was getting worse. He was just getting, his skin color was like deepening more and more. And at the time, it was also like that week, the weather was cooler. So I was like, I don't feel like I can rely on sunlight to just like bring him out there. And I was also like freshly postpartum, just trying to stay in bed. And so I was like navigating all these thoughts and like going through all these considerations of like, what do I prioritize? What do I kind of have to release and let go? And so I decided to get his blood typing done sooner than I initially wanted to, because I was like, let's rule this out. And I remember the night before, I was like researching so much that the fear of like what jaundice could be just was like stacking in my heart and brain. And like Andy too is like looking at all this with me, so we're both like new parents wanting to ensure that we're not being negligent and making sure baby's like totally okay, but at the same time knowing that what drove this entire pregnancy and birth was like wanting to do um you know less intervention, be as trusting as possible. But wow, fear, kind of does a lot when you're in that state. And it was like funny because it started to break down a lot of that confidence I had built up prior. And so we ended up doing a lot of tests and just trying to figure out what was going on with the jaundice, because he had prolonged jaundice. And so everything we could find, it was saying like, the more this goes on, the worse it may be. And you have to check the levels to make sure that you know where the danger zone is. And we found ourselves checking, because now at this point it almost felt like fear took like the driver's seat at that point. And so now everything was being led by this new driver compared to what was there before, which was faith in God and trust and love. And we kind of went down this path where we were just wanting to make sure like we ruled out every possibility of what it could be. Lo and behold, it was just prolonged jaundice. And there were so many moments I remember, like, where we would have, professionals tell us, hey, do more testing. Like, you want to make sure that you rule this out. I would check on this. And Um, like Andy and I would be like, at what point do we just say no? Like, at what point do we say like, it's like we think it's fine, like it's okay. But because the jaundice was like kept going on, we were like, or like, are we going to look back on this moment and regret that we didn't do this? And so we just kept going further and further and further. And I remember feeling so sad because I was like, how did I end up here? Like I I didn't want to use a Doppler, and now I find myself like going to the hospital and doctor's office like every week trying to check on what's going on here. Um, and I was like really upset with myself, because everything ended up being okay, and I was like, we put our baby through all of that for what? But like you said, like these obstacles and challenges are placed on our path for a reason, and I truly believe that. Like, I can say I regret a decision, but if I were to look back, I had to make those decisions to now know how I would go about things today. And that isn't to say that I'm like, let's say I'm like faced with a challenge today. I don't know if I would just totally go one way. Like it might be a blend of both. And, it might be a new set of challenges that I don't know how to navigate. So it really humbled me and taught me to still put my faith in God. I was praying like constantly throughout all that. And I truly believe like that helped a lot too. But it's like it is these are the lessons that you learn as a parent, and taking care of this soul and body that's beyond you, that's like part of you, but that you want the best for, right? And like, what does best look like? You don't know until you figure things out. And again, going back to what I said earlier, like a choice is a choice, and you take full responsibility for the consequence of that choice. um, you know Again, there's days where I'm like, damn, like I am bummed that our baby went through all of that. But my fear and anxiety was like through the roof at that point, and I was like, okay, this is also not good for me taking care of babies. So I kind of have to figure each issue out one step at a time and just keep trucking along and see where I come. And throughout all of this, these are stepping stones to like growing and evolving as a person.
Absolutely. And hindsight is always 2020. It's very easy to be in that seat that you found yourself in. Like, okay, we're a couple months down the line and this is the answer we've been given, and all of this for what, right? And thankfully, it was the result that it was. Hindsight is 2020. And I remember having multiple conversations with you on just bringing it back to have grace with yourself. You made the best decision that you could at the time you did with the information you had. And you did your job as a mom of listening to an intuition of wanting to make sure he was okay. Now, you reflect back on like, yes, that was probably driven by fear, but in that moment, that was telling you like, you need to make sure your baby's okay. And I think just having so much grace with yourself, because we're faced as moms, as parents, we're faced with those very similar decision forks in the road often about all different types of things. I mean, there is no job harder than that of a parent. The decisions we have to make and the weight of those consequences are heavy, and it could be minor things in regards to where's the kiddo going to sleep, breastfeeding, circumcision, vaccination, education, sleep training. The list is never ending. And at the end of the day, as parents, we all have the same goal, is to do right by our children and, hold true to certain values. But we want the best for our kids. And so we make our decisions based around that. And really, honestly, I have an episode I'm going to be releasing soon talking about navigating entering more children into the family, and how family or moms go through so many levels of guilt when they're having more babies, right? Because they feel guilty for the other. And one of the big key points I'm talking about is just that grace, like love on yourself the way you do with that baby. because those are hard decisions you faced, Chandra, and you made them the best that you could. So, do you have any advice for families that find themselves in similar positions on having these unexpected medical concerns so early on when you're still riding this birth high? You haven't really come down yet. And now you're like, oh gosh, I have to make these big decisions that I never thought that I'd have to make. What is some advice you would give a mom in that position?
Oh man. I would say it's hard, but really try to listen to your inner voice. It's there for a reason, and I think the more that you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. But also, like you said, give yourself the space to um, confront that fear and don't feel guilty about it. I think the part that I had a hard time with was because I knew that my fear was wanting to make these decisions, but then values wise, I felt so against what I believed in or felt like I was like aligned with. Um, it's okay. It's okay for you to make choices that are beyond what you normally would make, and like allow yourself to have that space to do that. Because I think that every situation is truly unique, and I think just it just goes back to yeah, like your desire to protect your baby is there. And so what you feel is like the best in that moment is probably the best in that moment because I, I think back, I'm like, okay, had I not done all that stuff, would I still be here wondering? And what if things didn't turn out well? Like, where would I be then? And so I think that's also, even if, like you said, even if fear is maybe making those decisions, like that's still also a part of you. So like trust yourself um and definitely discuss deeply with your partner. Like feel like because some partners can also have a different opinion. So like get on the same page with that person that is your ride or die, who is also your baby's protector, and feel like you guys are kind of moving on each step together confidently. And if there is no confidence, that's okay too, because sometimes you just have to do it to get through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Has your experience through pregnancy, birth, and your postpartum journey shaped your perspective differently on motherhood, or how has it impacted that perspective?
It has definitely made. I'm like I think it's like natural for us to judge or say like I wouldn't do this or I would do things this way. But I was very early on humbled, with my own choices. And so like when I see a mom do something, I'm like, that's the way that they feel is best for them. But I also think sometimes maybe where that judgment comes from, it's like we want to protect all babies and children, and sometimes we don't know what the best is for another baby, but it is coming from perhaps a good place where we just want the best for everyone. Um, but I think, yeah, definitely just being a lot more mindful about people's choices and your own choices. And then, secondly, I think motherhood is like it's such a. I always talk about how it's so um, like it's so overlooked that we're here on this earth, we're procreating, creating the next generation, but it's like this beautiful human experience. And when you see your child and you want the best for them, you're also growing as a human. So it's like as much as you're trying to help shape them to be the beautiful human that they are, it is probably going to surface a lot of things that maybe you thought you worked on and are over, or things that you didn't know were there. Like it reflects a lot of that. And so I believe that our children are our teachers. Like they're here specifically with us because I believe God perfectly paired them with you for a very specific reason. Um, and this is a tangent, but one thing that I always say is like when I get nervous or scared or worried, I always pray to God and I say, you paired me with my baby. You trust me to be his mother. So please, like, allow whatever decision I make or whatever this path takes us for it to be the right one because this is like the story that you have for us. And again, just like casting that worry onto God. But yeah, it's like, it's a really humbling but beautiful experience. And I look at it as like, it makes life feel richer. Like you experience another layer and like another opportunity of life that I'm really grateful for.
I love that. That's so beautiful. So, just a couple closing questions for you. First one, if you could sum up your birth and postpartum journey in one sentence, what would it be?
Ooh, okay, one sentence to sum up my birth and postpartum
Mm-hmm.
journey. Um, I think. Oh, okay, wait, sorry. I'm like, I have so many directions I want to go in. um, okay, I feel like it was a calling for me to return to myself, but in an interesting way. It was like it's like I'm going. It's like not a sentence.
That's okay.
This is a concept, I guess. It's like through the birth of my baby, I almost feel like I had a rebirth of myself. And maybe that's a sentence, but just to elaborate on it, it allowed me to feel stronger and empowered in my voice, in my values, and my vision. It also empowered me to surrender because surrendering is really hard. um, so yeah, I would kind of go back to that concept of like the start of my baby's life was the rebirth of my own.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. We're going to put that like in a neon sign in my office. That's beautiful. Okay. So, any last little tidbits of wisdom or advice that you want to share with our listeners, especially those that are considering a home birth or having a minimal intervention approach to pregnancy and birth?
I would say, I think the thing that's really highlighted in the home birth space is um, choice and informed consent. Like that's a huge topic that everyone talks about that that people dive into, especially because they realize all these options are available to them. If you want a home birth, I would say like take ownership of that. Don't just like walk into it thinking that someone, your midwife, is going to tell you all the answers. Like you have to take full responsibility for every choice and option. I remember there was a point in our prenatal appointments where you're like, all right, I want you to come up with a backup hospital transfer plan. And I was like, I don't even want to think about that. Like, I was like, why are we even allowing this to get into our headspace here? But actually doing it made me realize, okay, if I actually was in this situation, it forced me to look at all the things that I would have to consider. And having to make all those choices when you're laboring is crazy because I'm already, very particular about how I want my home birth. There's gonna be a lot more conditions that I'm gonna want to uphold in a hospital birth. And so had I not just worked through that fear and done that, I wouldn't have known. So, just really know all the nooks and crannies of choices that are available to you and know that actually not even choices that are available to you, you have the choice to make what you want for your birth. Um, and yeah, like look at everything, like not just birth, but like circumcision, vaccinations, everything, like every aspect of life there, you don't have to just go with the status quo because that's what you're used to. Um, Allow your mind and heart and eyes to be open and question.
Right. And lean into prayer for sure.
And faith, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, my love. This was an amazing conversation. I am so grateful for you and being able to have been your midwife on this journey and now to call you a friend. It is quite the honor. And thank you for everyone listening. And yeah, Chandra, if people have questions for you, because you are such a wealth of knowledge, is there any way that you're open to people reaching out to you or finding you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at CEVEJUN. It is a private page, so don't know if I'll see everything, but definitely shoot me a message if you have any, and I would love to answer them. And Jessie, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I'm sorry I blabbed a lot,
Oh,
but
no, it was amazing. I eat up everything you say all the time.
oh, I appreciate you and I appreciate this time. And anyone who's listening, thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you guys. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me on this journey of growth, connection, and conscious living. If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone you love, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment. Follow me on Instagram at Gold Soul Midwifery and sign up for the newsletter to stay connected and in the loop. Until next time, stay grounded, keep growing, and remember, your gold soul shines brightest through the beautiful and messy moments of life.